Hello, and welcome back to the McCall's Quilting Summer Garden Quilt-Along. I'm Laura Roberts, and I will be your hostess on this quilting adventure. And the quilt we'll be making is the most beautiful thing. You can see it behind me. It's just summer and light and freshness, and it's just the most beautiful quilt ever. And of course, that's the fabrics. That's, for your information, in case you want to know, the collections are from Northcott, and Charlotte is the one with the beautiful florals and those little prints, and the solids are the Toscana solids, which are the most beautiful solids I've ever seen. So don't miss getting a kit if you want to make the quilt look like this one. If you do want to get the kit, you'll want to go to mccallsquilting.com/quiltalong, and you can order it there. Okay, so what I'm going to do with you now is show you how to make no-waste flying geese. And I'm going to be showing you this before we get into cutting, because the cutting is a little different. And you'll see that you will have a choice of cutting when you look at your instructions. But what I can tell you right now is that you'll be cutting 5 1/4 inch squares instead of the 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles. And the way we come up with that number is you take the finished size, a finished length of your rectangle, and you add 1.25 inches to it, and that gives you the cutting size of your large square. And then for the small squares, which are the smaller triangles in your flying goose, you're going to take the width of that rectangle, finished width. So we're cutting at 2.5. The finished width is going to be 2 inches. And that's, of course, because we're cutting off the 1/4 inch seam allowance on either side. We're not cutting it off, we're subtracting it. So you take the 2 inch finished size, you add 7/8 of an inch, and that's the size you want to cut your small squares. So you'll see at the end of the segment, there will be information for you on how to figure the cutting for any size flying geese that you're making. So you'll see that at the end of the segment, so you don't have to remember it right now. But what I have for this quilt, I have a 5 1/4 inch cream square, and then I have the 2 7/8 inch medium blue texture. And what I did was for each set like this, if you have 4 small squares and 1 large square, that's going to give you 4 flying geese. And you don't have to cut the stinking triangles, you know. So you will not be cutting diagonally. And I'll show you why. But first, the first thing you're going to do, you need to draw a diagonal line on the wrong side of that small square. And if you haven't done this before, it's really easy. You can just take a ruler and put it from corner to corner like that, and a pencil or a pen, it's up to you, and just draw like that. It's really simple, it's really fast. If you have a lot to do for any purpose, for any quilt, you can sit there. What I do is I just take a pad of paper, turn it over so I have that cardboard on my lap, and you can draw all these lines when you're watching TV or sitting through a football practice or whatever you need to do. It looks like sort of a pain, but it's really easy and fast, and it's no big deal. So how is this going to turn into flying geese? Well, the first thing you do is you're going to put one of the small squares right side down on a corner of the big square, like that. And then you take a second one, and you're going to put it on the opposite corner, like that. You want to make sure that these lines are going together. Do you see how the lines are just run into one line? You don't want to do that, because that's not going to work. Okay, so I'm just going to put that back like that. Make sure it's all aligned, and I'm just going to grab a couple pins. Let's see, and you don't have to pin a lot. When you get really comfortable doing these, you may not want to pin at all. I find that I'm more comfortable pinning these just because of the way they move. But if you'll notice, I'm pinning kind of a ways out from that line, because you're going to be sewing 1/4 inch to either side. There we go. Okay, there. So here we go. I'm going to take you over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to show you how it works. Okay, now first I need to put my glasses on so I can actually see and not sew through my finger. Okay, so remember how I lined those up? Okay, I'm going to make sure they're just right and that the one closer to me is on top. I just think it works better that way. And I have this 1/4 inch, you see that 1/4 inch mark there on that foot? So I know where the 1/4 inch needs to be, because I want to be to the side of it. have a 1/4 of an inch to either side of that line. And I have my little thread catcher there, so we don't run into, go down the hole. You know how that is when you start something with a little corner and you end up disappearing down into the wheat dogs? That's bad. Okay, so I'm just gonna feed this in like that. There we go. And I'm just gonna keep sewing a 1/4 of an inch from that line. When I come here, I'm just gonna use my little awl to make sure I've got those lined up. I want those lines right where they're supposed to be, like that. There we go. Gotta make sure that goes under like it should. Okay, I'm just gonna stitch to the end there. I'm gonna cut off my little thread guy. Oops, and put him back under. Okay. And then when you're actually making these, you can chain pieces. You can just keep running them all the way through, and then you turn them around and run them all back. So, but since I'm just doing the one, I'll do it now. So as I say, now I'm just going to turn it around. I sewed that side, so now I've just turned it around, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side of the line, just down that 1/4 inch away, making sure, just kind of keep that guy flat. There we go. Okay. And all the way down and off. All right. I'll take that out and snip these off. And then I'm just going to come over here and show you what happens next. Okay, so I'm going to take out the pins. I love this pin cushion. The first time I've ever gotten to play with it is today. I think it's really cheerful. Okay, how's that going to be flying geese? Isn't that weird? Okay, well, you can use a rotary cutter for this, or just a pair of scissors. You're going to cut on the line. Just right down. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be perfect. If you're a little to either side, it doesn't matter because that's your seam allowance. Okay, so I've now cut that, and it still looks really weird. It's going to look even weirder in a minute. Okay, get my iron. And what I'm doing, I'm going to press those triangles out like that. Just over, there we go, like that. Okay. There we go, and I'll do the same to the other one. Isn't that weird? Uh-huh. Are you seeing anything that reminds you of a flying goose yet? Well, triangles, I suppose. There we go. You can imagine this is pretty fast to press when you've got a big iron. I got the little guy here, which works. There we go. Okay, so I got those pressed out like that. I've got 2 of them. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take the 3rd little square, and I'm going to put it down here on this piece. I'm aligning it with the corner again, and making sure that that line goes away from me. That line should come out right there between your 2 triangles. Do you see that? So I'm making sure it's aligned on these edges, and right there, I'm just going to throw a pin in here. And I'll turn around and throw a pin in on the other side. Okay, there we go. And it's going to be ready to go. I'm going to do the same thing on this guy with another little square. Okay. Make sure you're right. I want to make sure that's aligned along the edges. I don't want anything wonky. There, that looks good to me. Okay. I'm turning around to put the pin in because when I'm stitching along past here, I don't want to run into the head of the pin. And I use these pins with the kind of the big sort of bead on the end because they're easier for me to pick up and to grab. The little pins, like silk pins, I just can't grab. So, okay, I'm going back to the machine. Here we go. Get my glasses back on because I just can't see close without them. All right, and now I'm going to put my little thread catcher back in there. There we go. And it's very similar to what I did last time. I am going to sew 1/4 of an inch to the side of the line, just like that. And of course now, because I have 2 pieces, I can chain piece. There we go, just like that. Okay, something kind of cool. if you're sewing just where you want to, you're going to find that your stitching comes right out there in that little notch. Like that. See that? Here we go, right down the notch. Okay, and we'll just grab my little thread catcher and chop him off there and run him under. Use a lot less thread doing that. And what I like about it is it doesn't go down that hole and I don't get a bunch of thread hanging around everywhere. Okay, so this is what it looks like because I chain pieced. Now, you can actually leave the little piece, the little thread between, but I cut it just because for me, I think it's easier. And I'm going to turn that around. I'm going to go down the other side of the line 1/4 inch away. Like that. There's one. And here's the other. Doesn't that kind of looks like an X-wing? Oh, if you're not a Star Wars fan, you can ask somebody. Actually, maybe it's more like a TIE fighter. I happen to be a Star Wars fan. All right. Okay. Oh, I've sewn that all the way through. I'm just going to cut my threads off. Oops. Cut off my thread catcher. Okay, I'm going to go over here and show you what happens next. Alrighty. Okay, so pins come out. No great surprise there. Okay, let's get that little guy out of the way because we don't need him anymore. Okay, I'm going to cut on that drawn line again, just like that. Again, you don't have to be perfect. It's a seam allowance. If you want to run it through with a rotary cutter and a ruler, you go right ahead. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, I'll bet it's looking a little goosish now, huh? Oh gosh, check it out. Look what happens when I press that triangle open. Oh wow, look at that. Ha ha, a goose. And if I just keep pressing, you may want to press the seam, it's up to you. And you can just press all these out like that. And you just turned the one large square and 4 small squares into 4 flying geese. Now here are some that are nicely pressed and that I cut the little dog ears off of. If you want to cut your dog ears off, those are the little points you see. And I would have to press, this is another point. If it looks like that, I want you to see this. If you have something that looks like this, where it's kind of, you see how it's not, that line, that edge of the triangle isn't going along with that line, it means you don't have it pressed open enough. So it's an easy fix. So if you see that, it doesn't mean, oh no, you did it wrong and you're going to have to take it all apart. It just means you need to press it a little better. See that? And there it is. It's all good. So to cut off your little dog ears, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? I hope my dog doesn't ever hear me say that. Not that she'd necessarily know what it meant, but she's pretty smart. She might. And that would be scary. And that's all there is to it. Cut off the dog ears, and there you go. So 1 big square, 4 small squares, and you end up with 4 flying geese. So again, we have a little sheet of information for you that's going to show you how to cut the squares, what size to cut for any piece rectangle, any flying goose you want to make, depending on whatever your pattern calls for. And that's it. So we're all set, and you now have a new technique for making flying geese quickly and without any waste at all. So I hope to see you back here next time. Again, if you want to order the kit with the beautiful fabrics we're going to be using, go to mccallsquilting.com/quiltalong, and I'll see you back here next time.